Well, Vinay, thank you so much for being with us here today. Congratulations on your film being part of Sydney Film Festival while we watched.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about while we watched?
While We Watched is a newsroom documentary. It chronicles journalist Ravish Kumar. Ravish is a very popular news anchor in India. He's very hotly debated. Ravish, formerly Ravish used to do a 9 p.m. broadcast at his news network NDTV. And the film is really, it's a very personal story uh, of what it means to do journalism and the challenges journalism faces in today's times, not just in India, but across the world. I spent a lot of time with Ravish's family, with his newsroom, how he does his stories, what his challenges are, understanding the daily life of a journalist. I believe we are at a place in the world right now wherein all of us need better journalists and better journalism, but we don't quite know how to get there. So this film is my way of starting that conversation and you know inspiring dialogue that will help us all build a uh, better system of journalism.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take and very interesting perspective that you've chosen to explore. Um, is there a reason you've decided to choose this perspective?
I mean, I was very so I made a film before. I co-directed a film before this called An Insignificant Man, which also played at the Sydney Film Festival, and
Yeah.
that was about a new political party in India called the Aam Aadmi Party. Uh, so I've always been interested in systems of in public institutions of sorts. Like I believe people come to the news uh, because they are hoping to get information that will help make their lives better. So
Mm,
news is a major system of public information in India.
mm,
And when I was talking to people, when I was talking to my friends in India and even abroad, a lot of people would tell me that they had stopped watching the news because it's not good for their mental health.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I found that while I completely understood where they were coming from, I also found that to be worrying, considering how vital a role news plays in shaping the narrative in a country. That there were so many people who were choosing to disconnect themselves from it. So I really began to wonder that if the audience is feeling this, what are the people who create the news feeling? What's happening within newsrooms? What is the process of making news like? So I was really so that was my filmmaker's sort of curiosity.
Mm,
At the same time, when I came across Ravish, who is my protagonist, he was on TV, and unlike every other news anchor who tells you that the audience is the best and the audience is number one, Ravish was going on air and telling his audiences that you are the problem and we are here because you're watching the news and you need to stop watching the news, which I found it was a very delicious irony
mhm.
that here was somebody on TV asking people to stop watching TV, but it sort of displayed a vulnerability in him that this here was a protagonist who had seen a better time and was now also wondering and thinking about his own position vis-a-vis the audiences around him. You have to imagine that he was in his late 40s when I was shooting with him. So he had done this for over 25 years already. Oh, sorry, not, I mean, he was in his 50s. So he had done this for 25 years already. And when you've done something for 25 years and then you begin to feel that your audience itself is changing and you begin to wonder about your own relevance vis-a-vis your audience, it's a very vulnerable moment for
Mm.
for somebody who's in their 50s. So I found that interesting.
So that's
uh
why you chose him? Is
yeah,
that
so I decided to sort of, this is not a film about a young protagonist looking to change the world.
mm,
It's an old protagonist who's wondering if the world cares.
yeah, that's a very, very interesting perspective. So, how was it? You said you filmed in the newsroom, and How was that experience of filming? Because I heard it took 2 years of
Oh yeah,
filming
it was
to.
very intense.
Mhm.
We would start our days, basically 2 hours before he starts his days, in terms of getting to his house, setting up our cameras. We would start rolling as soon as he comes out. We would shoot with him throughout the day, non-stop, and shoot with him all the way till he came back home at around midnight.
Wow.
And then on Sundays, we would be shooting inside his house as well at midnight. So it was
Mhm.
it was it's a fully I believe in full immersion while I'm shooting, and it's a very reality TV kind of immersion that I do while I'm there. uh, so even when you see the film, you will it's a very very personal, upfront, at the front lines portrait of Ravish's life. It's not something wherein I went for 15 days, shot, and then came back, then went 3 months later, shot for 20 days, and then came back. I was there every day with my team. uh, Within the newsroom, it was also challenging because we were shooting within a news organization, and you know not people who weren't aware of the power of the camera.
Yeah.
Within the news organization, most people understand, the power of the visual image and what's said on camera. So it took me a lot of time to just to let people be comfortable around me while I was shooting. It's always tricky. It's not like you get access forever.
Yeah.
Every day you're figuring out access with these people who are doing very, very serious work,
Mm.
uh, within the newsroom. You constantly have a lot of different kind of stories coming in, people being very vulnerable, people negotiating that vulnerability. It's an ethical dilemma is always playing out around you, and you have to be sensitive to everybody uh, who's trying to do their job. So it was, for me as a filmmaker and for my crew, we learned a lot purely by the privilege of being in such a distinguished newsroom. But yeah, it was very intense.
And just being, because of the take that you were have, like, the perspective that you were taking for the film, and being in the newsroom, did you have to convince the newsroom and members of the newsroom that this is the take I'm taking, and are you okay with it? Or were they okay with your perspective on the film?
I mean, honestly, all these people were so busy with their jobs that
Mm.
they would once in a while stop by and talk to me and be like, "What, you're still around? What are you doing now?" So yeah, I would be like, I'm still making that film that I was making 3 months ago. So they were very, very accommodating, if anything.
Okay.
Of course, they everybody wants to understand how you're doing, what you're doing, and the conversation is largely informal. Nobody is, people also give you the independence of, this is a news organization, right? Everybody is doing their own story. So I was given the journalist sort of code of respect, wherein you're doing your thing and
Sure.
you clearly know what you're doing. So that's cool, as long as you don't come in our way. So people within the newsroom were only cooperative. And in return, me and my team, we were always you're always trying to figure out who is okay with you shooting on that day. Everybody is, as a filmmaker, one of your major talents in life is to be able to read the room, is
Okay.
to be able to understand who needs what in any given room.
Mm.
Uh, and within that newsroom, when there's, over 200 people continuously around you, it was your different members of my crew were shooting with different people, because we had to be very very careful and understand what people's concerns and sensitive spots are, and then navigate around them. So as long as I think we were able to do that, it was cool.
Mm. It's interesting. And how did you get um, Ravish Kumar on board?
He was the easiest to get on to get on board, honestly, because when I went to him, he was already like under a lot of pressure, and he was moving around with some sort of security concern. So I was like, listen, I really want to make a film, and I'm keen about exploring what lives of journalists are in today's time. And through you, I really, other journalists like you. And he was like, okay, how long do you want to do this for? And I was like, I don't know. I'll come for like a week, firstly. Figure it out. I need to figure out if there's a story. And if there is a story, then we'll take it from there. So I came to shoot, and on the first day I knew that there's a story. I saw a cake being cut, and somebody was leaving the NDTV organization. And on the first day itself, I realized, okay, there's something happening. So then I subsequently, from 1 week, it became 1 month, wherein I was like, I'm definitely doing it. Then I rented a flat, an apartment close to where he lives. And so he was constantly baffled at my level of investment within the story. And because within the news cycle, he was like, the maximum I've given to any story in my life is rarely like 3 or 4 days. Or sometimes if I'm making a long report, maybe longer. But usually I do daily news cycle stories, and sometimes I do 2 in a day, 3 in a day. So he found it perplexing that I spent 2 years just shooting and not even like editing anything or showing anything. So he was curious, and he was like, all right, let's see what comes out of this.
That's so interesting. And how did you take 2 years of content and put it in a 19-minute film? Like how did you do that?
Honestly, that's my job. Like, you are all of us, it's being able to see, you see a large tree, and a carpenter can, decorate an entire restaurant, an entire house, and turn it into like chairs and beautiful, intricate furniture. Right. So that's my job as a filmmaker, to be able to glean through footage, to be able to craft a narrative, and a hopefully compelling narrative out of the mundaneness that is sometimes life. You are there's obviously cinematic conventions, and 3-act structure, 5-act structure, God knows how many act structures exist out there, and there's some classical sort of film tropes. So you rely on traditional film vocabulary, and you hide it within your narrative. But besides that, it's a skill that me and my editing team. I had a very, very good editing team, and we edited the film during COVID. So we were very, very. I was very fortunate to find this team of young editors. My story person Reshma, my editor Abhinav. There was Karthik, there was Aditi, who were assistant editors. There was Aman, who was my associate director, cinematographer, who also worked very closely with all of us on the edit. So it was just a bunch of people chiseling at the footage and trying to understand and trying to make it work. And we were very nervous while we were doing it, because it was also COVID. So there are all kinds of anxieties that that everybody was going through, and so were we. And there's a lot of anxiety and rawness within the footage, within the film, and some of that definitely comes from the period that we edited the film in.
Wow. Yeah, because of the COVID situation. And how do you think this film will inspire the young generation of journalists?
Honestly, it's a little presumptive for me to go like it will definitely inspire a young generation of journalists. I think the younger generation of people who are looking to be inspired know where to find their inspiration. I can tell you what my ambition is, that people over the last decade or so, there's a serious credibility crisis within journalism, especially in India. I can tell you for sure that journalism used to be a profession, and journalists used to be people who everybody respected.
Yeah.
Not anymore. There is many contributing factors to the fall of journalism in the public eye, and of course there have been some very bad players and some very bad agents within journalism, but there has also been a huge disinformation campaign that has eroded people's faith in journalism. So I'm really hoping that with this film we understand and we inspire a conversation towards better journalism by including our journalists. There are some people, and across the board, who are trying very hard to do their job right. Uh, and there is no way we can build a better future without them. They exist on all sides of the political spectrum. They exist in all fields of journalism: finance journalism, health journalism, political journalism, sports journalism. Uh, it's absolutely essential, given the challenges that we have coming up in the years ahead, that we build better systems of journalism right now. For example, everybody keeps talking about, right now there's a big writers' strike happening in Hollywood with the writers protesting against AI. I can tell you one of the biggest frontiers that the AI battle will be taking place at is journalism. You're already seeing, morphed images confuse people, but you're going to see much more than this over the years, over the months ahead. In fact, as as the US, for example, is going into elections next year, and many countries in the coming years, journalism is going to be hit very hard with the AI problem. So we need to bring our journalists together. We need to stand with them, and we need to ask them questions. But we need to build a better journalism while including them.
Wow, that's a very strong stance, which is incredible. I mean, as you're taking such a strong and bold stance on journalism and what it should be, do you have any fears with it while exploring this subject? Maybe
Fears?
any fears?
Not really.
Not really.
I mean, it's a we've gotten so far in civilization by building better institutions, right? Uh, like, for example, the Sydney Film Festival is an institution, it's a system. What it does is it allows storytellers like me to come to Sydney every year and play our films for audiences in Sydney, and from elsewhere. And that becomes a system towards building a better culture, right?
Yeah.
I am when I came to films, I really wanted to change the world through filmmaking.
Yeah.
Over the years, my idealism has definitely taken a battering, but it still exists. So I am trying to tell a story that I believe is reflective of my concerns, and it has my bullet points towards how I think we can build a better country and a better world for everybody. And I don't think that I'm saying anything that is particularly awful or even particularly, upsetting. I am just collating what's happening around me and putting that into a narrative. And most people will see the film and I hope understand that we're all trying to figure it out. I'm not against people.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be heard right now.
Yeah. I think yeah, what you've done, it seems like it's a very important part of the future journalism culture, because it's a very important conversation that you've opened up, which is incredible. So what would you say your learnings were from the movie, like the whole process? Do you think you had any learnings?
I think there's generally a culture of like this question earlier about is there fear in me? And I've encountered that question a couple of times. The thing is, of course, everybody's concerned, and people, as artists, whenever you're taking on a contentious subject, you wonder how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
And every subject like this comes with a lot of responsibility, right? So I have tried to be as responsible as I can. And my biggest learning, or at least one of the learnings, is like while I was editing the film, I showed it to as many people as possible across the divide to try and build a better dialogue. So my learning is always towards being more inclusive in my process of filmmaking and hearing people out. I think that is something, that is where my confidence in this film comes from. That if you're able to understand that even the people who disagree with us can contribute to making our dialogue richer, there is a way forward. And that's something that, that's a personal takeaway for me from this film.
That's great. That's awesome. What are some of the type of stories that you want to tell in the future?
Lots of stories. I want to make an animated film. I want to make. I'm writing in fact, this film was supposed to have elements of animation when I was developing it really early. But it's always hard because animation is very expensive.
Yeah.
I am currently writing a hostage drama with my associate director, cinematographer Aman, which is I've only made political films so far, so I want to make something non-political after this also. So that's something I'm exploring. There's another project which has around, and so there's a couple of projects. There's a very famous book that I am currently involved with, probably adapting into a doc, but as a producer. There's another sort of environmental themed doc that I may direct. So there's a couple of projects. I'm figuring that out while I'm trying to get this out.
Awesome. That's really exciting. Well, all the best for While We Watched, and it was lovely speaking with you. And thank you so much for your time, and all the best. Hope to speak to you again.
Thank you so much, guys. Lovely.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Australia's first Indian magazine to have a national reach, Indus Age is the largest circulated South Asian magazine in Australia with 5 simultaneous editions, 55,000 copies printed monthly, 220,000 readers, largest network of clients, undisputed leader in community news. Indus Age is circulated in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth to over 525 outlets. Grab your copy now to get the latest on the community, news from India, Bollywood, music and much more. For more info, log on to www.indusage.com.au.